Welcome to the Great Reallocation, our weekly guide to the inner workings of the Roy family. I am the eldest boy, Zachary Shevich, and he needs a pain sponge. It's Arturo Zurita.
It's it. It's all come down to here. Hopefully, you're happy with who
Mhm.
took the throne. I am upset with the walk down to the throne. I am aggravated. I have never had an episode where I just yelled out, "Damn it, Shiv," than any other one.
Yeah, I think we arrived in a place that maybe we didn't expect, but I personally didn't find the finale to be very surprising. And I tweeted
No.
something out to that effect. But I think like a great series finale often isn't that surprising because if the writers are doing their
Mm,
job, like you know and understand the characters well enough that their decisions
you
make
just press and
sense to
play.
you. And exactly. And
That doesn't mean they don't piss you
everybody's
off, though.
yeah, and that's what's brilliant about Succession is that you can like get into
uh,
the ups and downs of it and the who will win of it, and you root for your problematic faves even if you don't think they're good people. But I thought it was a exciting finale for me. Definitely met my expectations, maybe even exceeded them a little bit. Were you underwhelmed? Were you
ooh.
overwhelmed? How did you feel, just generally speaking, about the way that Jesse decided to wrap things up on Succession?
Um, like you said, it almost feels like the season three finale revamped, right? It's the season three finale without Papa
Mm-hmm.
Logan just as Ghost. You kind of have a similar winner. Someone's coming up. He doesn't have the white suit, but he's got something better. He's got a CEO position for the person who takes it all. It is that just repeated. It's all of the siblings messing up exactly how you would expect them to mess up. Honestly, I've never seen a show or a group of people mess up so cleanly, like mess up consecutively, all of their problems collectively combining at this one moment where they need to get together the most, and then just fall like dominoes. So again, to me, it was the most frustrating thing to see these siblings where, as problematic as they are, as much as none of them should be in that position of power, I don't know if the people who got it should either. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
know with it being a season finale, they're going to leave a lot open ended as well, but I still think that there's a lot to be answered for. I still want to know what's going to happen with the Mencken
Yeah.
stuff. You know, that has to do
Mm-hmm.
with who's going to take over and what he's going to allow. Could he block the deal? I mean, that's still a thing. If I'm not mistaken, it's still a
Yeah.
possibility. There is still also the fact that they did kind of call it an election, and that hasn't come back into play.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of these little threads that I knew they would still leave them open, but it makes me curious to see like what else there would have been in store. But clearly, the show wanted to end it on like the moment certain people are out. Then so is the audience. Like they're wrapping it up there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of wanted to see more. To me, if we were doing that, then Papa Logan's death would have been the finale. Um,
Right.
but I see you liked it a little
Yeah.
bit more. Let's see what your highlights were.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to get into, and just speaking to what you talked about, I think it's interesting in that while it is like a finale, and it does end this whole story of succession and who will succeed, it's not exactly like an ending for these characters. That speaking to what you're talking about, like we don't know
Yeah.
what's going to go on in the rest of Tom and Shiv's lives together, or maybe not together. We don't know what Kendall's next venture is going to be. We don't know how all these people are going to shake out in the future, but like they finished the story that they started telling in the beginning. Like this is a story about how power will transfer over from this like mogul, this titan, this insurmountably huge figure in Logan Roy, how that power will move on to the next generation or not. And if that's the story that is at the heart of the show, then I think they did a really good job of wrapping that up. And yeah, there's those things that will linger and we'll think about, but it almost maybe would be too clean if we got straight answers for all those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I didn't
a
want to
mixed
flash
bag for
forward or
sure.
anything, but
Exactly.
no, I
Um. So
I I did think though, with it being 90 minutes, the last couple of ones have been 90 minutes, which I enjoy. I love that a lot. You
yeah.
were getting these little pockets of them just hanging out, and that's why I wish a fifth season could have filled that out a little bit better. That's probably an only
Right.
thing. I would say, in terms of the production and how they decided to have season 4 like ramp it up, right? I think we would even say that for Barry. A lot of season finales end up having that, where instead of extending it in the worry of it stretching out too thin, you have moments in the finale where they're beautiful. I would not cut out any of those quiet moments where they're having downtime. I just wish I almost got a whole episode. I feel the opposite. I wanted a whole episode of that before we got to the tension. But here we are.
Yeah. And we are with Tom Wambsgans coming out on top.
A lot of people had him in the bingo.
We theorized a lot of how the show would end, who would end up on top. You and I, at least, I don't think we spent a lot of time entertaining the idea that it would be Tom, just because he's seemed like such a pushover, such like a interchangeable cog in the industrial machine. And yeah, that ended up being his greatest asset. What did you think about Tom? And was this a win for the Midwest?
Yes, for the places that what's his name Connor was going to go visit. It was funny to see the Greg theories come up, right? Everyone was like, "Oh, that would be really funny," and as much as we entertained it, we thought, "Oh, it'd be a little too much." One, I love how everyone jumped on the Greg train. Oh, everybody had a spark of the idea the last week before Succession. Everyone wanted to put it in.
Right.
That came out to be really goofy. This is the best version of that. It wouldn't have been Greg. It would have been Greg through Tom. It makes a lot of sense that it would be Tom. Like you said, the pushover, the cog in the machine, the one who was oiled up enough to have been there throughout the entire thing, who had entertained Logan and got a little son before his passing, who was there for his passing. The fact that he was the one who was able to even... he pissed off Madsen at first, and then at the end of it, the reason he takes it is because he's willing to sit there and take stuff like, I do it with your wife, in the right circumstances. He is the exact type of scummy person who would end up on top just because he's willing to take all of it. Is he a killer? I don't know. That's where Papa Logan claimed you needed to be one in order to take this role. So I guess my only thing with him is, like, as awesome as it is for him to take over, I wanted to see him more in a position of power. We barely started getting that towards the end. And I think that's the one thing I'm going to miss. I know we're not supposed to ask for more, but I would have been really interested to see what he would have been as a boss.
It's CEO Tom?
Yeah, that would have been a completely different side of him.
Yeah.
Could he
we get like little bits of seeing him run ATN, and I don't know, I never took him to be a particularly good boss. He seems pretty belligerent, particularly like he's so awful to Greg. Yeah.
Easily. So I don't see how that was going to trickle down to be anything else.
Well, I mean, the only way that it does seem to work is in the way that he pitched to Madsen. He says, my value as a manager, I think, I'm simple. I squeeze the cost, I juice the revenue, follow the boss, I digest strategy and implement. He's a guy who doesn't really seem to have his own ideas. He just kind of follows the lead of whoever is the strongest person in the room. He sucks the biggest dick in the room, as Shiv not so politely says it. But that's, in the end, exactly what Madsen wants. He doesn't want someone with ideas. Shiv has too many principles and ambitions of her own. Shiv says Madsen says she was too pushy on the India tactics. She's smart, but I got plenty of ideas, okay? I don't know if I need more ideas.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we're going to get into a lot of people's results. Tom winning is really not Tom winning. There's strings attached to it. Yeah, exactly. He may be in charge, but he's not really steering the ship, I guess. Yeah, the whole thing got revamped by the end. It's like they were running for mayor, then they realized, oh, actually, the governor runs all the rules. Like, it demolished what the role was supposed to be, because at the end, it really is Madsen.
Yeah. That moment when Madsen tells that he wants to, do you think that there's a part of him that is actually interested in that, or is it all a test for Tom?
Both probably. I'm surprised he didn't pull a card about
it
being
could be
his
both.
Kid. That was something that I thought he was going to try to dangle over him. It just seems like such a Madsen thing to do. But he's now his little boy, so I'm pretty sure he could bring it up whenever he wants to, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know if Tom could lead, but more than that, I don't know how much
I love the
Tom can take.
Sorry, what was that last bit?
Did I break out? I was just saying that I don't know how much Tom can lead, but I also don't know how much Tom can take. Because we don't know how much Matson's going to push him over. He bent over backwards for Shiv, but at
Yeah.
what point is he going to break?
Yeah, he says he has a very, very, very high tolerance for pain and physical comfort. I love the
It's true.
terms pain sponge for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it ultimately comes down to like, I think they're in bed with like some kind of sleazy people. You know, Matson is trying to
Right.
buy a conservative news organization, and when he says, "Why don't I get the guy who put the baby inside of her instead of the baby lady?" Like that's the sort of internalized misogyny of this kind of world, in the end manifesting to screw over Shiv and put her husband in the catbird seat, which I
So
think is just another interesting layer to this all. Yeah,
can we lay it out that Shiv is not this angel people want her to be?
right. Yes, like
Bro,
there.
people
That's
think
been
that
the
she chose herself, she did not chose good. Everyone thought, oh well, she's on the side of Matson, so that makes Matson this great player. Matson screwed her over. Matson was never gonna be any different than anybody else.
yeah. Matson is the same kind of breed as everybody in this world, right? He's not like
Thank you.
pure or better, and I guess that does bring up the question when we're talking about the finale, right? Like it gets to the vote, it gets to a place where the vote is 6-6, and Shiv is the last one left, and she
Mm-hmm.
can't bring herself to vote for Kendall. Do you think she made the right decision? Do you think she was doing it to stop Kendall from becoming a monster? Did she do it just to allow her husband to be the CEO so she would be close to power? Do you not think Kendall would be good at the job? Do you think maybe it's a version of all three of those questions?
It is kind of a version of all three of those questions, but I'm going to lean with a very confident and hard fast. Absolutely not. The moment that she got up on that 6-6 split, my blood pressure boiled. It was worse than when Jimmy Buckets lost that game the other night, right in the last 3 seconds with the Heat. This girl at the last minute
Heat culture.
decided to flip, not because of the goodness of anything. I'm so tired of hearing that. Shiv is the how do I put this? She's for the people who are still working and making money off of the ways that they don't like, but socially want to say that they're like
Right.
nice people, but they're really not. They just don't have the
Classic white
balls to be a
feminism.
Jess. They don't exactly. I like how they also called a Jess 2.0 at the beginning of the movie. There's just always going to be another one.
New
That's
Jess.
someone. Yeah, new Jess. That's someone, as we said last week, who came in and finally decided, yo, there is a line that was drawn here. Probably should have seen that from farther away. She made the decision to leave. Shiv just did this. You just put the comment there. The moment she saw her brother sit on the chair,
Mm,
run that scene back, you will see everything that happened. That whole night prior of
yeah.
like, oh yeah, at least it's going to be the best for all of us to keep it in the family. She was not respecting her father. Her father wanted to keep it in the family. You sent me that really cool edit that brings up how Logan said, everything I did for my kids. Even if it wasn't for one particular one in mind, it definitely wasn't to give it to Tom. It wasn't to give it to somebody who wasn't going to be within the family. So at the end of
Hmm.
it, yeah, I thought it was the most selfish decision. There's no goodness in that. Who did she
Yeah.
just get in? Her husband, who we'll get into what that means for her, because I actually think that's the most bittersweet part of Succession. What a crazy, you
Yeah.
shared a shot of that. That is the craziest part. But first, I want to say Tom is responsible for calling the vote.
Hmm.
So you didn't do it for the goodness of anything when you already knew what your husband was doing. You already know what Matson did to you. She put herself in the worst position. I don't know if you have that picture of the hand, but she ended up the biggest loser. To me, I think we could argue Kendall, because Kendall goes back to the water. But Shiv became the Tom in the relationship. I don't know how long she lasts in that.
Yeah. It's definitely not a position that I feel like she will comfortably occupy at the very least.
Hell
Um,
no. Hell no.
yeah, it's just such a bitter moment at the end of this. The handhold or
Ooh.
non-handhold between them, just like laying their hands on top of each other. You mentioned that I had tweeted that out. I tweeted it out with one of the pictures of Trump and of Donald Trump and Melania, who somewhat notably have also had their issues holding each other's hands in public.
No
And
contact. Yeah.
the way that they just sort of like barely are touching hands, I don't know if that's like an intentional allusion to what's going on with Tom and Shiv there, but there's like, even though they're partners, even though like now they can organize their schedules together, there's
Oh,
just
what a
like a
lie.
coldness that will always exist between them.
Easily.
You know, she's trapped herself to a future of becoming like her mother, who she despises more than her father. You know, she's already prepared
Right?
to be a emotionless, distant mother who's not really going to do the job of raising her kid, and now she's
Wow.
attached herself to this
Wow.
relationship where, you know, the guy who really is kind of struggling to show her any love. Like, there's that moment earlier in the episode where she actually asks him, do you want a real relationship? And all he can say is, I don't know. He's been through too much with her.
100%. And do you blame him?
No, not at all. I mean, I do hear, like, I thought it was very interesting. I wrote down Shiv's line. I know that we said the worst things, but I think I've always just been scared in relationships of the underneaths. You know, what's the worst thing a person thinks? But we know once you've said and done the worst things, you're kind of free. And you know, it's interesting that that's like, for
Nah.
her, that's comfort. She knows
Nah.
his deep under, he's like terrible nature underneath, I guess. I don't know.
No, she does not. She knows the terrible nature of a man who married into her family and didn't have anything. She was the boss in that relationship. Now he's literally
Yeah.
the CEO.
Hmm.
Tom is like a horse. They broke this man in. Personally, business wise, I don't know what he may become, but it's definitely not going to be. She's not going to want to taste her own medicine if it was to ever be returned. And that's where I love how you connected her to being the mom. She's going to be more miserable than the mom. When the mom came out and said, oh, board meetings, there's always board meetings. That's always been a thing. She's not a part of those board meetings anymore.
Yeah.
It's just going to be the secondhand talk while she's raising the kid that she already said she did not want. It's terrible for Shiv. I don't understand the headbutt move that she did just to get back at her brother.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a whole bunch of reasons that you can say that motivated her decision. I feel like it is kind of like a complex mix of many things, but you know, I don't buy this sort of like altruistic interpretation of it that I've seen some people having, that
Thank you.
she kind of
Thank you.
stopped she stopped Kendall from becoming Logan. I
Yeah,
I
they're,
I,
they're
I
trying to see
think,
something else in her. That's why.
yeah,
They want her to be
maybe
better than
she
she is.
like, yeah, maybe she did like recognize some element of Logan in Kendall that she didn't want to deal
Yeah.
with, the whole like, I love you but I can't stomach you. But it's not because
Beautiful
she
line.
thinks that he's going to be as good at the job as Logan once was.
Easily. And everything that we're saying can be true while her also, guessing like a broken clock correctly twice in one day. Of course, your brother should not be in charge. You shouldn't be in charge. Your little brother shouldn't be in charge. None of you should be in charge. If anything, I want to pull a name, Zach, that I didn't. I said if I wanted to see him, and we did not get to see him. Maybe I missed him in the background. But the boy Lawrence came
Hey,
back, dude. I know for a second you were hearing his name and you're
I
like,
I,
there's
I was
no.
gonna say, man, you were on this.
I was gonna come in with a belt,
You've
bro.
been
I was
on
gonna
that
build this.
from the beginning of the season.
Yes, bro. I thought they were gonna redo this shot. I thought when he was going up in the
uh,
elevator, where I thought
we may
Kendall was
not have
gonna take
seen
it to the
him, but
top
Lawrence
floor.
was back.
Oh, he was name
Yeah.
dropped so many times. By the sixth time, I went, okay, we're not gonna see him, but he's here. Somehow, in some way, like you said, we may not answer all those questions, but we know Shiv has now flipped her relationship. She is going to be that mom. Kendall, back to the water, being as miserable as he can be. I don't know what's going to happen to Roman. But this man, at some point, will finish out that line because he is in talks. He is in talks with Madsen. So to some degree, he
Yeah.
may not be CEO, but guess who's still at the company? Lawrence.
Yeah.
I wanted to
I
see
mean,
him so
look,
bad, bro.
maybe Tom is not long for the position. Maybe he's just gonna be there as a placeholder until Matson realizes he's got no ideas of his own, and then he can bring in Lawrence, and Lawrence will
That was
finally eat
great.
Waystar Royco. Maybe that's
That was
the
freaking
season
fantastic.
5 that we didn't get.
Uh, damn. I love
You
it. Post credit
mentioned
scene for Succession.
right. You mentioned a couple times already about Kendall's return to the water. We talked about that earlier in the season. That
Tell
water
me.
and Kendall's relationship with it has been a recurring thing on this show. That's been interesting, and that like obviously season one ended with the moment where he kills the cater waiter. There's that moment where he almost drowns in season three. He kind of has that almost baptism earlier this season in water, and then again we see by the water for that final shot. But the thing that I sort of noticed about where Kendall ends up on the ground, sort of looking out into the water, it reminded me of an earlier episode, one of my favorite episodes of Succession, the "Which Side Are You On" episode, when Kendall tries to hold another board meeting that he thinks is going to go well for him, and ultimately the votes are against, and Kendall is wandering the streets lost because something that they do over and over again on Succession is show these characters high up. They are literally above the city looking down at people. They're often
Yes.
in on the tops of skyscrapers. They're removed from everybody. And Kendall particularly has spent a lot of time on the tops of buildings, sort of above everyone. And it just feels like very pointed and very intentional here to return him to the ground. That he's no longer
Fair
above
point.
everybody. That he's
Fair
lost
point.
that status. And I thought it was a really interesting point in Jesse Armstrong's interview after the episode, where he talked about like this being sort of the central element of animating element of Kendall's life. Like we find out in this episode that Kendall was promised the keys to Waystar Royco
Oh,
back when
yeah,
he was
yeah, yeah.
7 years old. So he's built his whole identity from the point he was a child around the idea that one day he would be the successor, and now it's gone. Like that, the opportunity for that is no longer on the table. The thing that animated his entire life has been removed from him, and they didn't give us the moment of Kendall taking his life that I think some people anticipated could be in the cards, but it's potentially in there for down the line in his life. It doesn't He does not seem like a person who will find fulfillment in a lot of things.
Thank you. That's it. Like the act doesn't need to happen. It's worse. He has Colin the guard dog there, who's gonna be watching his every move. He can't take that last goodbye. He's just miserable now. Like you said, that was such a crazy line to hear because that means that's how long he's held it. It's been a generational thing for him. And without that, he tells it to Shiv, right? When he's like demanding her vote, please give it to me because if I can't get this, I don't know what else I'd be. He now has to live
Oh
as an empty shell. A rich
yeah, I
empty
mean
shell.
that's a
Richer, but empty.
I wrote that line down too. Like a cog only built to fit one machine. If you don't, sorry. So I'm down to. Here's the thing. I am like a cog only built to fit one machine. If you don't let me do this, it's the one thing I know how to do. He's like, he can't imagine a future for himself outside of this. And despite all
Because
the
of that
things that they've
quote
done,
from
to sort of
Kid.
draw
Wow.
conclude. Yeah, and like they've done all these things to sort of draw um, parallels between Kendall and Logan this season, but ultimately, and ultimately, even though there's a part of Logan in all of his kids, none of them are Logan. They
Nope.
don't have it all. Um,
Nope.
yeah. Um, Man, I don't know. There's so much to get to in this episode. I feel like we're gonna skip over some stuff, but
Well, let me sprinkle some
um
stuff on what you were saying because I like what
yeah.
you had said about him being above. There was a point at the beginning of the episode where he's talking to Stewie, and he
Hmm.
does this bit where he's like, "I see you from all the way up at the Waystar building." So he's already still playing that card. I can see you from down there. Come up here, right? This control of
Right.
being above everybody. Then at the ending, right there, you have a beautiful shot. Gotta quote it. The horizon line, right where it's supposed to be. He's living
Hmm.
that boring life now, right in the center. So yeah, it's been a very interesting motif to follow through
Yeah.
with him. But uh, I don't think it would have been good to see him be the CEO either. Like obviously we were rooting for certain people, but at the same time, in reality, none of them should have control of it. I want to spin it in two ways before I get to the idea of we had mentioned they're like Game of Thrones, right? They're basing a lot of their stuff. You had brought them some parallels to
Yeah.
real life. to real life. Though those real life successions have not happened yet, so I'd be curious to talk about that in a little bit. But
Hmm.
before that, speaking of his successors, yo, when he grabbed his little brother after what freaking Roman said to him about his kids, let's talk about that. Was that a
Yeah.
full revelation? Do I just not remember that this man may not have a bloodline of his own?
Yeah, I mean, they've sort of meant. I think they've mentioned it kind of in passing, and
I
you
feel like I
know,
remember, but
and Kendall's daughter is obviously South Asian, so there's some, you know, bloodline, I think, element to it there. But the thing that really interested me in that moment is that like there was sort of like a casual uh, nature to the way that Roman uh, said that too. Like it's not something that he came up with in the moment. That's definitely something that he and Logan have talked about behind Kendall's back in the past. That whole idea of Kendall's kids not being actual Roy children or whatever because they're not his blood. I
sheesh.
mean, you know, it just a very terrible turn to or screw to turn in at that moment, but really kind of I think shows Kendall's inability to master the situation, be in control of the moment, and that he returns to being a child. You know, really throws a tantrum in front of his two siblings there, and in another way also becomes more like his father because
Yeah.
what was Logan's thing with Roman? He was like physically abusive to him, and I think you know in that moment that I'm trying to show right now where Logan, or sorry, Kendall,
Mm.
Freudian slip, where Kendall gives him that hug that pops his
Love
stitches.
this.
It's kind of that. It's that same thing of Roman becoming compliant to the elder after some form of physical abuse. Like he's, I don't know if it's like a Pavlovian response or just a trauma response, but this is sort of the way that Roman has been taught to be communicated with. And it's very sad to see that this is
Yes.
like what Kendall, who once defended Roman from those physical attacks, this is what Kendall has turned himself into in his attempts to snatch power.
This is why we love the show. And this is why this hour 30
Yeah,
minute episode should have been three other episodes completely. It's
yeah,
little moments like that where they allow the characters to do something disgusting, something repulsive, something that may not even make sense to the average viewer while you're watching it because you're like, why would you do that? It's like, no, it's these inherited scars. Like, not just physical ones, emotional ones, like you said. Yeah, there's so much happening there in that moment. You said he threw a tantrum in front of his boys or in front of his siblings. He threw it in front
um,
of the whole building. It's all mirrors. It
well, yeah,
echoed.
what was that?
No,
Yeah,
he threw it in front
exactly.
of the
And you know,
entire building, bro. Everyone could hear him. You're not getting the job after that.
exactly, right? Like he's not making a great case for himself. And you know, a lot of this episode was spent talking about the optics of it, and it
Yeah.
has to look right. And you know, I'm marginally better, but you know, he's clearly not worried about optics in that moment where he's losing himself. I did think it was
No.
interesting though. I put up on the screen. We did get that one shot of Kendall from the back, which I was hoping and thinking we might get, drawing again another parallel between
It's a good
him
point.
and Logan, because there's
Saddest
that
way,
shot of Logan from the back in the credits. Yeah, the
but
saddest
not
way
with
to find
work.
out that they're more like each
Yeah.
other than we realize. Yeah, they're just the same broken
Terrible.
people.
To even wrap up that point with the siblings in that extra meeting room arguing with each other, him lying about killing, I thought was also a very, just in terms of how the siblings are feeling about each other, to have that ripped apart from them, knowing that that was part of the season 3 finale, that very iconic shot where they're all hugging each other in their
Yeah,
uh, just with the sun blazing down on them. And when he has that revelation, it brings them closer together. So them hearing that he's lying is like a sick what it's a sick lie to tell, first of all. But then
yeah,
the other two start feeling, I think that's what opens them up to really solidify. Actually, forget you being CEO. Like you're actually a terrible sibling. Why would you lie about something like that just to get sympathy from us? And I think that's what opens, like you said, uh, the flood for Roman to say and open up something that was already probably casual talk within their group to him, because he's like, you want to lie about something that big? All right, well, let's just put something else in the room. You don't really have a bloodline. She does. So I guess Logan wins in some way, vicariously.
yeah. his in a weird way, his legacy lives on, even if it isn't
Yeah.
as the head of the company. But uh, uh I don't know. And I think it's also like all that more tragic, because it gives us these moments of happiness, of togetherness. That scene of Meal Fit for a King, where they're all in Caroline's
Great.
kitchen making the gross smoothie. I mean, those are some of the moments that I think I enjoy the most on Succession, when they are able to sort of drop their fronts and actually be siblings and actually be like kind of kids with each other. And you know, to give us both this moment of unity and this moment of celebration, which I actually found out in listening to the Succession podcast interview, this was the last scene they shot. So you can, I'm sure there was a lot of like,
Wow.
yeah, just emotion and togetherness in that moment. But to go from that, and then in the very same episode, them physically going at each other, you know, we haven't seen them more than play fight, and now they're actually like trying to take each other. It adds another layer of tragedy to the whole thing.
Easily. Yeah, I had heard that they finished filming at whatever that location was. That was the team was, but I didn't realize it would be the same.
Barbados.
I like I like the scene before this when they're in the water when they let Kendall go in first and it's just Shiv and
Yeah.
Roman and like ad libbing him. What their brother would be sounding like if they like turned on him. I thought
You
that
tried to
scene was
murder
really
me?
funny to me. He got the stare down. That's what he did right. It was the stare and the mouth because Kendall does this thing with his mouth. Or just like kind of
Yeah.
lingers there. He got that down perfectly.
Absolutely. I wanted to return just quickly though to that moment when he denies killing the cater waiter, because I saw somebody point this out on Twitter, and I'm sorry I forgot who it is, but uh, another layer of tragedy to this all is that he Kendall was rejected by his dad because he's not a killer, and then rejected by his siblings because he is one, and just that he's never the right
Ooh.
mix of stuff. I don't know.
Damn.
Very sad, very tragic. Um,
Yeah, I know everybody started bringing up the names as well. You had mentioned it to me prior as well, and I know everyone was combining it because technically his initials are KLR, so there was
yeah,
that
like a
there.
killer.
People were bringing up Tom because I know there's all the literary things. You had even brought up a couple episodes ago the connection within all of the endings of the titles. I know you made a video about
Yeah, the
that.
John Berryman
Um,
poem.
I'm a big fan of Lost, another series that used books and history to kind of like answer things about characters and themes. Obviously, this show does it to a degree where some people had guessed that it was going to be Tom from long ago just because of who Tom is named after. Obviously, there's the idea of Shaban's name being Shiv, really coming
Yeah.
in as a
Do
Shiv
you
at
want
the
to
end of
talk
this
about the
episode as well.
Nameberry thing?
Go for it, bro.
Did you watch this video?
Yeah,
Because
everyone was sharing
a
those videos.
baby name webs yeah, a baby name website seems to have nailed the ending of Succession. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to see it, but
Wait, does it come
apparent,
from a
you know,
baby website? I seen it as just a TikTok, and
yeah,
people
it's
thought that.
not even a like culture analysis website. It's for but they
Damn.
pointed out something smart in that, you know, the unusual name among the cast is Wambsgans, and if you look up who else is named Wambsgans, there is a baseball player who is famous for having the only unassisted triple play in the World Series, or as they put it, taking out three people during the finale of baseball. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that was there from the start. I saw somebody on Twitter even alluded to that way back in 2021. So it was out there. I don't know if that's been Jesse Armstrong's plan from the beginning, but it kind
Big
of feels
baseball
like
fan.
it.
I can see that. I mean,
Yeah, right. The Brits are
definitely.
all natural baseball fans, right?
Yeah, definitely assisted to a degree. For those who don't know in baseball, you usually you would toss it to the people. That how would you even do an unassisted? It'd be a catch, a tag, and hitting the base. Maybe I
And a
haven't seen the
second
play. I don't
tag?
even know if they were filming back then. Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
We should look it up.
Um, right, that would be really good. Maybe it looks just like what Tom did at the end of the episode and being able to get that win.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was. I wonder who guessed Barry then. It was probably another baby store, if not like a Walmart.
Right.
But I know they
Um,
had also mentioned the idea of obviously with Rome being Roman, the fall of Rome. There's also with the
yeah.
Roys being a translation of them being kings who have now fallen. So I know that on
Mhm.
rewatches, there's still plenty for me in the show that I'm gonna be like picking apart at. You were telling me earlier on that one of your favorite lines from this season, which was the "You are not serious people." That line
Yeah.
has already appeared in earlier seasons. So just little threads like that, because I think the
Hmm.
one thing they got really down in the show, regardless of where it goes and who disappoints you, whatever the results are, it's always been a series where they are fleshed out, fully drawn characters. And now that you know more about them, rewatching the series, you can pick certain things out that you will see come back to either haunt them, cause a decision that they make, or I don't think anyone gets helped. I was trying to say something positive, but I think they're all just being haunted, tormented by the
Yeah.
decisions of the past. But that's where I think
Do
the shows
do you
did a really good job.
do you view this as a sad ending or a happy ending, or is it a
It's a
mix of
terrible
them?
ending.
Because I can see both sides of the argument. Like
What's happy?
they're all. I I think the only element of it that I can say is truly that seems kind of happy is Roman seems free from the pressure and guilt and whatever. He seems kind of maybe a little bit uh, at ease drinking a martini at the bar. Although I did think it's interesting. I don't know if you caught this element too, that uh, Roman is drinking a martini there in that last scene, and Jerry's drink for the series has always been a martini. So he, despite moving on, he might have some lingering, things he's working through, especially with Jerry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could say that having them get rid of their association with their father's company, have freedom for it, is in its way kind of a happy ending. But
sure.
they're also broken that I don't think they'll find some silver lining or some greener pasture out there.
Exactly.
This is the big thing in their lives. This is the thing they will remember for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. To Roman, I think it showcases how much he doesn't care. If you don't get the job, like when he was up there, when the scene has what happens where he's getting gripped, he's like, "Why couldn't it have been me?"
Hmm.
Well, you know, a year, 4 seasons to tell you why was never going to be you. Once you lose
Right.
it, if it doesn't sting that much, it's because you never really cared about it to begin with. So I can see him being the freest. But the way he looked at Jerry, that's trauma. Like that is
Yeah.
a boy who still has not grown up. He, unlike Shiv, was still willing to have the cycle continue to be abused by his brother. I don't see him getting any better. I just see him as a quitter. He had no problem quitting. Shiv, I have said, I think has the worst of the worst because now she is going to be the slow one in the relationship. I don't think that's going to turn out well for her because that's all she's had going for her. There's a line that Tom said to her earlier. You don't like failing the exam, the test. I
Yeah.
thought that pinpointed it so perfectly because now he's the master with the pop quiz. He's the teacher.
Hmm.
That's not a good place for her
Hmm.
to be in. And then with Kendall, like we said, everything was leading to him being there. So I guess Greg did win. You know, I loved how Greg got his yes. What a beautiful way to set it up earlier, and then just put the tag on him. Why was he still holding those? I have no idea. Like you're about to become CEO, and he still had those in his pocket. But when he put the thing that they were using, that Connor
Hmm.
had them, whatever their cycles were, uh, to, to whatever your property was going to be.
The allocation stickers, yeah.
That's crazy, yeah. Because at this point, you know, at least he was an egg at one point. Now he's just furniture.
Hmm. Yeah, we also finally found out how much money Greg makes. He's clocking a cool 100K, the world's best paid assistant.
For your
Is
soul,
that more
sure.
or less than you thought he was making?
Uh, look. To
I don't know. I
me,
don't know if I'd sell out my soul for 200K.
I wouldn't look. 200K is not too shabby, but that's your soul, bro. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna see anybody for 200K. I
Yeah,
don't think it's worth it.
exactly.
But I guess there's no way, bro. Didn't we
Yeah,
see
I
his
mean,
place one time? I feel like his place is taking a
well,
good
wasn't
chunk
his
out of that.
play? I feel like his place was like. Am I wrong, or was he staying in Kendall's place? I could
Okay,
be
it could
wrong
be
with
that.
that.
All right. Well, still, the
Yeah,
taxes in Manhattan, it's taking a good chunk of
exactly.
that.
Um,
Well, who knows?
I
Maybe
thought
they got
Greg
good
had a
tax people.
cool, a few. Uh, exactly, they probably can skirt their taxes, knowing the ways the Roys. I thought it
Hmm.
was a very good Greg episode too, even if he was kind of more of a tertiary character. Obviously he's been slipping more and more information to Kendall, and then he gets the news that kind of animates their action for the second half of the episode. And also, his relationship with Tom kind of comes to a head, and they actually have a fight in the bathroom in that one moment. And
That
Greg
was
has
yeah.
endured not just like emotional abuse, but like physical abuse from Tom throughout the series. There's that moment when Tom's throwing stuff at him in the office, and Greg here finally like stands up for himself a little bit, although not necessarily. I don't know if he would do it if he knew that Tom was going to end up as CEO.
Right? Would he have ever slept Kendall?
Never, never.
So now the dog they've been beating on for 4 seasons is the boss. I saw someone in the chat say he's gonna wish he got fired. I'm telling you, there's a lot more baggage there in store. That these characters are not done. Greg could be as miserable as possible. I don't know what darkness lives inside Tom. I'll just leave it like that. And after getting slapped, whoo, I don't know what he's gonna do with him.
And any other bits that we should get into? We mentioned the great allocation with Willa and Connor. I thought that was a very fun little moment there. We didn't get a lot of them in this
That's
last
actually
episode,
the
but dividing
perfect
up
ending for them.
the rest of Logan's possessions. Yeah. I love, we didn't get a conclusive ending to what's going on with the election, but they do say that Menken's win is held up in the Wisconsin court system. And I don't know, the tone of the conversation seemed to be that it might not happen for him. So Connor might be stuck in New York, not going off to be the ambassador of Slovenia as he hoped.
Hysterical.
Uh,
Yeah.
but they're gonna end up spending a lot of time together on Willa's new cow print couch.
Ridiculous. Do you think that that is their way of saying it's all going to fall apart? Because, again, to me, if Mencken doesn't win, then I do feel like all this finale, while everybody gets to know, will also crumble. So it's almost like we
Yeah,
got a
I mean,
finale that in episode 11 would have just readjusted. The same way we saw Shiv and Tom fight, and then they're like, should we be okay by the next episode? I
right.
feel like if there was one more episode, all of it would have been undone the moment we got a
Yeah.
resolution to what was being held up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because Willa and Connor have kind of been the steadiest couple for at least this season, if not a little more than that. She was the one spouse who actually stood with the children at Logan's funeral. But they did sort of hint at like, oh, I'm happy for now. She joked about maybe leaving him later at their wedding, and now that things are getting real, they got that. What does Roman call it, the second week ish. It does not seem like things are
That's
going
funny.
to stay happy in Logan's old apartment, even if Willa does get all her new furniture.
Yeah, Shiv and Roman had some really good quips around there. I like when they were doing the acronyms for the cycle.
The
It's always whatever,
acronyms were
whatever.
great.
That was good. That was good. Those are
Yeah,
the little pockets, the little moments that I'm gonna miss.
yeah. Another little moment that I thought was really endearing, and like I'm almost upset with myself for how emotional it made me feel. But another moment in Logan's apartment, we got a little look back at the big man, the virtual dinner with Dad. I'm glad they were able to find another way to get us a little more Brian Cox in this finale. It wouldn't have felt quite right without a visit from the Titan. And seeing the Royce siblings sitting around and watching their dad wistfully, also seeing a side to their dad that I don't think we've ever really seen on the show. I'm sure they've seen it in their lives at some point, but just sitting around, jovial, joking. He rants off a list of every person who's lost a presidential election. He didn't hit exactly everyone, but he hit
Uh,
most of them. Then
yeah.
Jerry has her limerick, and Connor does his little teapot thing, and Carl sings "Green Grow the Rushes." I don't know. I found myself getting a little bit like uh, I felt it in my heart more than I expected to, given how nasty these people are.
Yeah, and the fact that that was another thing that Connor had on them. He was privy to those moments. He is the one
Right.
who knew about his where he wanted to be buried. So it's like just seeing another aspect of him that, even after death, you're learning more about him.
Yeah.
It was a good moment.
And despite all that, Kendall still thinks he's the eldest boy.
That's funny though. That's funny. That line is
I mean,
hilarious, bro.
even Shiv
I love
laughed
that
at
line.
that.
Of
It's
course you
very
laugh
funny.
at that. That's like I'm from Waterloo where the vampires come out at night, dude. I'm the eldest boy. Like, no, you're not. But you're just gonna say it.
Uh,
And he said it
did
like
you have
BOI.
Did you have a favorite moment from the episode?
One that keeps coming back to me. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite moment, but talk about this one that you have right here because that was a crazy shot.
Yeah, I mean, the fight between them, I thought was so tense, and also just like it. I think the thing that is partially interesting about how they chose to block this is it's not Kendall swinging at and throwing a punch, right? He's trying to dig his fingers into Roman's already open wounds, which is a very different way to hurt somebody, right? He's not trying to. Yeah, he's not trying to create something new. He's digging into what's already there, and I again, it's little touches like that elevate success shows that even that they're speaking to their relationship as a whole rather than trying to create a small moment.
Easily. One that I'll mention was Mattson seeing the magazine cover and being
Yeah.
repeatedly asked, "Oh,
No, it's
is this
funny.
magazine-"
I liked
it's funny.
it.
It's funny. No, it's funny. It's funny. That's the only part that I had seen him say, yeah, it 100% bothers him, but he's not gonna say that. It's funny.
Yeah, I feel like it's like I mean they've been drawing a lot of Elon Musk comparisons with Mattson's depiction, but the way that he will sometimes like
Me?
try to laugh at a joke about him on Twitter or meme off of it. Yeah,
But clearly it bothers you if you're commenting on it.
exactly. But another shout out to the amazing production design on this show because that looks so much like it would belong in the New Yorker. That little illustration they have of Shiv as the puppet master there.
Very good.
Yeah. Any final bits before we get to some of the best quotes?
No, let's do it. What is your final best Succession quote?
Ooh, I mean, I haven't done the research to do the whole series, but there's so many ones from just this episode. It starts like right at the top with Shiv saying Rome might not even show up from whatever jerk dungeon he's been being pity spanked in. There's the one that we alluded to earlier with Tom. You've fallen in love finally, fallen in love with our scheduling opportunities, which is so cutting from him because he's spent so much of the show trying to get them to have like a nice actual loving relationship, and it's scheduling opportunities that finally gets Shiv on their side. Saw a lot of people responding to Caroline's. I don't like to think about all these blobs of jelly rolling around her heads, just face eggs to eyes.
Yeah, I didn't know she had lines like that in her.
I mean, I feel like that also speaks a lot to her nature as an unloving mother, that she doesn't like eyes. Like, what's going on there? One line that Tom almost says under his breath that's kind of hilarious: more fucking hay than a dictator's birthday.
Let me sneak one in
Mattson
here.
had a couple. I mentioned. Oh yeah, sure.
Carolina, right? Carolina. It was just her saying
Carolina
and Carolina, fire Hugo.
Yeah. She saw her moment and she took it.
That was great. And then at the end, she does get a mention by Tom. So good for her.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like that's a moment where even if Tom hasn't been clued into that, like he also is not that interested in keeping Hugo around. More interested in keeping Carolina.
Carolina, what's her name?
Jerry.
Jerry. And then he said he wanted to get rid of Frank and he wanted to get rid of the other guy,
Carl.
Carl. So I
don't
know.
Although those are
that's how I would plan
those are the same decisions that Mattson made a few episodes ago. So is he just still being Mattson's lapdog, or
yeah. Okay.
Speaking of Mattson, I liked his line. Sometimes I feel like every fish in the city is the same piece of Xerox Branzino. Xerox Branzino would be a good band name, I think.
That's decent.
Greg's negotiation. If I give you something incredible, will you give me something amazing?
Something amazing? Yes, well, give me that amazing, and I'll give you something incredible. Yes. Every time that boy's on the
Shiv
phone,
when
it's a good one.
yeah, very funny. Greg negotiating, I could just do a whole episode
Yes.
of. Shiv's line to Roman. What else did he say when no one else is around? That he was the Zodiac killer. That he did Tupac.
Tupac.
And then I also really loved when Stewie comes in. We didn't mention Stewie yet. I'm always glad to have Stewie around. But Kendall's line to him: "You like pancakes and waffles, and you kiss guys on Molly. You're not the heart of darkness. You're grilled cheese with a suck dick."
Dear Lord.
Uh, I also think that's for the shippers out there, the Ken Stewie shippers. That's a nice little moment to give them that queer representation.
He looked good too. He had the
Yeah,
midnight cocoa
yes.
going on. He had a little more grays, but he made sure that for the board meeting, he came in looking clean.
Yeah, I mean Stewie always looks good on this show. Shouts to Arian Moayed, who I think has developed into like an actor a lot of people really like. I know
Good.
he's on Broadway right now with A Doll's House. He's in theaters with You Hurt My Feelings, and he's got Succession going. So
Oh, he's
good
really
looks
great.
for the
You hurt my
guy.
feelings. Good for him.
Yeah, really great in that. Any of those quotes stand out or something else?
Greg, I'm gonna lock it in. My final quote. I'm gonna have to give it to Greg.
Nice. I like that one too. All right, so let's talk about the final season as a whole. First of all, who would you say won this season? And I don't necessarily need a character here. For me, I mean, like clearly Kieran Culkin is one of the big winners here. He emerged from kind of being in the shadow of some of the bigger actors on the show to maybe being like
Acting?
the lead
Yes.
contender for lead.
Easily.
I even would, as much as I think Jeremy Strong is doing like incredible, unparalleled work as Kendall, I kind of feel like for this season, I would have vote for Kieran in lead actor if we're talking about Emmys. How about you though? Anything else that you think about who won the final season of Succession?
Acting wise, like for the performances, the cast, and everything, yeah, I agree with you with Jeremy Strong already being like a force in a bunch of other movies he's had. You know, he's been in Oscar contenders. Sarah Snook, I've loved for a while back since like Predestination. I know she's always had it in her. Everybody else has already been said. I think Tom or what's McFadden, whatever his first name is, I'm blanking on it.
Tom Wambsgans.
Matthew, right?
Matthew McFadden, yeah.
He was able to show another side of him, but it's Culkin, dude. I think today's generation is gonna recognize him as the Culkin over who was our Culkin growing up.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a successor right there. That's great.
Right? Like
So that to me is
he's
really
pulled
big
in Elizabeth Olsen.
Yes, I thought you said he pulled Elizabeth Olsen. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yes, he has pulled in Elizabeth Olsen. That is actually a really great way to put it, because I've been watching both of theirs. His Hot Ones episode I thought was fantastic. It was showcasing that he is a star who is now recognizable on his own. Same way as Elizabeth Olsen has become her own stand apart, has her own legacy besides what her siblings have done. So a big shout out to him in terms of that. In terms of the series as a whole. Surprised to say it. I mean, I'm not going to say America won, but Tom and Greg, they're the ones who, if it starts at a certain point, they ended up with something a little bit more. At least the pain that they're going to be going through is going to come with a bigger paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. They, despite being kind of on the outside for a lot of the show and not necessarily being the people making the decisions, they're the ones who were able to outlast and they're sycophantic enough that they're useful to a new regime, right? Because
Yes.
it's Roman and
Which
Kendall and Shiv. Yeah, but it's Roman and Kendall and Shiv who all have these like ambitions and views of themselves as leaders, right? Yeah, they have their egos are so big that they can't just continue their dad's legacy. They want it to be something of their own. But people like Tom and Greg who are trying to work their way in there, weasel their way in there, the reason to, or the thing that will allow them to continue on in this job is pleasing whoever's directly above them, and they've done a great job of that through 4 seasons.
Yeah, they are the better employees, easily. And the fact that Shiv
Exactly.
was hurt by her own husband and was still willing for him
Hmm.
to keep the job over her brother. Again, biggest headbutt
Yeah.
in the history of a series finale.
On the official Succession podcast, they interviewed Alexander Skarsgård, and he pointed out that there's a moment in episode 9 where Mattson overhears that Tom is still at the office, not at the funeral. And that's another thing where he was such a hard worker, he didn't even come to Logan Roy's funeral. That's an endorsement for making him the CEO. So.
Wow. Through death.
Uh, another winner, I think we can say, Jesse Armstrong. He ended the on his terms. He called his shot 4 seasons, and I think the show hasn't dipped in quality. It hasn't really disappointed, and it feels like a complete statement. He said in the after the show interview that he doesn't think he'll ever write something this good again. But good.
I agree.
He's owning how great the show is, and I think we all recognize that it is one of the all-time great prestige TV dramas.
He also recognizes that it's not just his words, it's the people who are portraying them. It was the people who were putting them on the screen.
Yeah.
And I would be worried too if I thought I matched it, but then did not have this cast and crew. Because it's not just getting one person, it's getting a whole ensemble to be able to repeat them.
Yeah, and it's been one of the best ensembles in TV. We frequently come on this recap and talk about not just obviously the leads and the supporting actors, but all the little people they bring in, even the characters who show up just for like 1 or 2 episodes. They always are able to pull off of like a deep bench of extremely talented actors who not only sell this material but really like bring it to life. And yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure to have been able to get such like well performed drama here. Like the characters, the relationships are all understandable and dynamic, and you feel like you can invest in them. And even if you don't necessarily love who these people are or what they do, I think there's just a power to watching the ups and downs of it and being on that roller coaster alongside them that just made it incredibly watchable. So for me, like, I do put it in that pantheon alongside the great shows like Breaking Bad and The Wire and Mad Men, and I don't know if I have it necessarily above them, but it's at least sitting in their company.
Yeah. Not beating them.
How
But
not beating them? You don't want to say, you're not ready to say it's beating any of them?
Oh, I don't think it's beating any of them.
Well,
it's good.
How will you remember Succession? What do you think Jesse Armstrong wants us to take away from these 4 seasons?
So for me, if we had that joke about, are they going to Game of Thrones it, where, they have no books to go off of now at this point, where they were basing a lot off of reality. We have not seen the real life successions that are happening at that point in time, but because of that, I'd be curious to see how the show ages. Because it's such a political show, I can definitely see our upcoming election, it being referenced and memed a lot because of that. Because now we have an idea of what it's like to be in the newsroom, right? Like, he gave you that. That's the whole point. It's like horror movies. When they put you in a shower, it's so you're scared to go back in there. You're scared to go down stairwells, like whatever it is. They gave you one for that moment in time when you're seeing an election to kind of picture in your mind what's happening behind the scenes. I'm curious, as things get bigger, how will it all play out? Will the successors of these big companies that they were alluding to go that same route? I don't know if they'll go out as easy. I'm not a big believer. I think they stay in power, right?
Yeah.
But we'll see. Overall, to me, it's the writing and the performances that have stood out a lot. I think for a lot of people, we love the show. We think it's great. I think a lot of people do fluff it up just because of the flubs. Oh my goodness, prestige TV where they talk like kind of normal people. Are we finally here? Cool, perfect. Give me more of those. I like the ums. I like the pauses. I like the stumbles. That is what has made these performances so great. And again, it's because we had a dynamic where you had someone like Logan who can say these big roaring speeches, and then kind of Roman, I don't like doing his little things, and Kendall who does the same stuff, and Shiv who thinks she's saying something but she doesn't really know what it means. That's what I think to a lot of people was so revolutionary. That not everything was a clean monologue. It felt
Yeah.
like Broadway with all the flubs, and I love that about
Yeah.
it.
It's Shakespeare, but it's also, your
Adam McKay.
actual conversation. Yeah, it's Shakespeare, but it's Adam McKay too. That's actually a great way of
Yes.
putting it, because
So
it's both that like high drama and that like those stakes and that I don't know, the feeling of like life or death and tragedy, but it's also very silly and stuttery and thrown together, and I don't know, it's a really excellent combination. And again, as we just are echoing now, like you have this incredible roster who's made it all so much fun to watch. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I'm extremely satisfied with how it's all gone, and I'm already getting myself ready to do a full rewatch because I do love the show so much.
and it's worth it.
So I guess I can't cancel my Max subscription yet, but how you feeling about HBO these days? We're not talking about Barry right now. We'll probably get into that on Intercut soon, but it came to an end last night with Succession out the door. I did like it. But we'll get to it more soon. But are you canceling your Max subscription, or are you sticking around a little bit?
Nah, boy, I'm grandfathered in. I'm not gonna lose my $9.99.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think HBO has just like such a great track record that I would find it hard to abandon ship right now. I mean, maybe a couple years time and a couple more David Zaslav tax influenced decisions could affect this, but we're already excited to talk about The Idol. I'm not sure if it's going to be good or not, but I'm excited to talk about it. I'm very excited for the return of Righteous Gemstones. The last will be back at some point. We're assuming Euphoria will be back at some point, although latest news is that it might not be till 2025 because of the writer's strike, various other things. But like HBO has consistently been the destination for prestige drama and the best that television has to offer. So even if they're losing a couple of my current favorites, I still have faith in the engine to come and produce some more stuff. And now that Succession's over, they got all these other writers who are probably going to be pitching their shows. So we'll have to see what comes out of that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. Any final notes to say on 4 seasons of Succession? Are we going to leave it to the inner cuties to leave their thoughts in the comments down below, and maybe cut Discord in the description below to keep the conversation going?
Just don't be a Roy. Be a Jess. The one thing you should get out of this show.
There we go. Yeah. Look for the helpers, look for the heroes. Yeah. All right. So I think that's all for this edition of our Succession recaps. The last Succession recap we'll ever do. How sad. But you can catch more from me
ever.
Shevich by following me on Twitter, Shevich. V as in Walter. One last time, ICH, and check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Movies on all social medias, from YouTube, Letterboxd, and Twitter, or you can catch me every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
You can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, Podcast Addict, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. I like Overcast. And then make sure you subscribe not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed as well on youtube.com/IntercutPod, where you can watch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of Intercut streaming on our YouTube channel every Monday. We're not doing the picks for the week this week, but we'll be back next week with more weekend watch list, and we'll put out. We're also planning on putting out our picks for the week as separate videos going forward. So you'll see last week's pick for the week on the channel in a couple of days as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Please leave us a comment, like the video, consider heading over to iTunes to give us the much requested 5-star review. Thanks to our listeners in Canada who put us on the film reviews charts out there. Like our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter page. Support our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can find all of those at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on But thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, don't go down on Peter's special cheese.